Welcome to Outdoorsy, the podcast where we are redefining the word outdoorsy itself and reclaiming it for everyone. I'm your host, Madeline. A little bit of housekeeping before I introduce my upcoming guest. Just a reminder to subscribe to the Patreon Outdoorsy, and you get access to our Discord community, extra bonus episodes, voting power, all sorts of fun little perks. So that is patreon.com/outdoorsy. But enough housekeeping, enough about that. I really want to jump into introducing my next guest. She is all about bringing joy, inclusivity, and movement into the outdoors. Chelsea McCurdy. Chelsea is a queer hiker, Pilates instructor, and she founded Hobbit Hikers, which we will talk about more later. But it's basically, she's just on a mission to create a collaborative, inclusive space that promotes self-love, body confidence, through joyful movement and just time spent outdoors. Her philosophy is all about embracing who we are right now in this moment and taking on new adventures without waiting for the perfect moment. So as a plus size queer hiker, Chelsea is passionate about advocating for body positivity, and she's really on a mission to help others just realize that their bodies are capable of more than they think. Whether it's hiking or enjoying second breakfast, Chelsea's approach is all about making the outdoors fun and accessible. Her content has me cracking up all the time. I love it so much. I'm excited to dive into her journey and hear about how she's helping people fall in love with movement and nature. So Chelsea, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to finally see your face in front of my face.
Exactly. Chelsea and I have been following each other online for quite a while, so it's always nice to finally be able to chat, quote unquote, in person.
Yeah, in person.
Yeah, that's what this is. So Chelsea, let's just start with the first question, which is, how do you define outdoorsy?
So I'm going to already digress. Oh God, I'm so sorry. I used to have a t-shirt that said I'm outdoorsy and that I like to drink on patios because I was always called an indoor cat growing up. My mom even had a little book, and it was about kittens, and it was like there was a cushions and cream cat, and that cat would stay inside and drink cream and sleep on cushions. So she called me cushions and cream cat my whole life because I didn't love to go be outside with sweaty and gross hot weather and bugs, right? So it's a full 180 here, sort of. I grew up in the country, and I grew up barefoot in the creek, catching crawdads with hot dogs on a string and like wading through creeks and, building little fairy houses and stuff. And then somewhere we moved into like more of like a less rural area, and I lost some of that. And then I went to college and became like a city mouse. And so then I guess to me, outdoorsy meant reclaiming that. And I realized like I hiked one mountain, like Pinnacle Mountain in Little Rock. I will never do that again. It's not fun. It is just a rock. And that's not my kind of outdoorsy. My kind of outdoorsy is having snacks by a creek or sitting in a hammock by a waterfall and just feeling like nature's glory. It doesn't have to be like wearing a weighted vest and climbing a mountain. So there are different kinds of outdoorsy. And now mine is more than getting drunk on a patio, but less than climbing thousands of mountains. So somewhere in between those things for me.
Yeah, it's a spectrum, right? In between all those different things. And I feel like you and I are pretty in alignment with what our version of ideal outdoorsy experiences look like. It's like, can I just be hanging out and maybe like looking under some rocks in the creek and like maybe having a little snack and looking at some pretty things? That's like the ideal afternoon.
Yeah, that's what made me follow you. Was I saw you sitting, like you were like, I drove to this spot, and then I set up a chair and I have my dog and a book, and I was like, oh, we're the same. We're the same. And I love that because I also want to do that, but I don't have as many beautiful spots like you to drive to. A lot of ours have to be hiked out to no matter what. And I'm not complaining, but I was like, oh, we're on the same level here. Same wavelength.
Yeah. So that brings me to talking about Hobbit Hikers. Tell everybody like what Hobbit Hikers is, how you started it, what's going on there, because the concept is so cute, and I haven't had a chance to really like truly investigate how this whole thing started. So I would love for you to just tell our listeners all about that.
So I couldn't even tell you like the day that happened, the moment. I don't know where it didn't, like I couldn't tell you when that came out of my mouth the first time. All I know, I'll just start at the beginning, which is I feel like a very hobbity way to start something, like how the book
Yes.
opens, But so in high school, I loved Lord of the Rings. I had a group of friends who were all band geeks, and we went to see them, like the trilogies, each bit of the trilogy when it would come out, we'd see it in theaters. And I always loved it. And I just felt like, I don't know, it spoke to me. It made me feel calm and happy. But all of my friends were into like the battle scenes and the war scenes. And I was like, can we go back to Fellowship in the very beginning when they're sitting in the meadow? And they were like, that's the boring one. And I was like, I love that one. So like, I always just wanted to sit in that meadow and have a little, apple or a piece of bread. Like that just sounded so nice to me. And then somewhere around 2020, when COVID hit, I had an office in Little Rock in Arkansas, and they sent us home because I work hospital adjacent. I don't work in the hospital, but I work for a nonprofit who's funded by a children's hospital. And they were like, if you're not directly holding a baby in the NICU, we need you out of here because everyone is, we can all be contaminated. So we're trying to make it safe. Well, that was great at first, but then I realized I was sitting at home 16 hours just sitting and wanting it all went downhill very quickly in my brain. My mental health started to decline. And I was like, uh-oh, I'm not happy. I'm not feeling well. Everything is bad. And I called my friend Shelby, who is one of my Hobbit hikers. I call her the Sam to my Frodo a lot because Frodo, if you watch the movie, he's kind of stupid. Like we love him, but he just is kind of like, without Sam, he'd be dead. Okay. So without Shelby, I'd probably be dead too. Shelby's the one who downloads the map. Shelby's the one who knows the way. Shelby's the one who reminds us to eat the snacks. I'm just there for vibes and for the content. So we went out to have like an outdoor lunch by a river because it was cold. And I was like, Shelby, if we don't go outside, I don't know if I'm going to make it to next week. And she was like, oh, okay, shit. And I was like, I'm not kidding. Like, this is the worst I felt since I was 14. And so we go outside. Everybody was depressed at 14. You can't change my mind on that. We go out and have this like outdoor lunch on this little like table by a river. And I was like, it's all coming back to me now, Celine Dion style. I need to be outside. This is how I grew up. I spent all my days outside with my sister and my grandparents, like identifying plants and leaves and picking up. We had like a whole thing when we would go home after the school bus. We'd pick up rocks. We had a whole trail of them all the way up to our house. And we had to make a lap around the yard to do all the rocks and check under each one for bugs. And then I would like categorize it in a notebook. How did they not know I was autistic? I don't know. But I lived and died for those little bugs. So I was like, I want to do that again. And I want to go back to that. And so we started doing that. But again, I have to rewind it. I have a very long history with restrictive eating disorders and exercise bulimia, just to get that out there. And so it quickly became a way of me being like, well, we better go faster. We better work harder. Let's do another one. Let's do more than one a day. And Shelby was like, reel it back in, reel it in. And I was just like, what? And she's the one who always told me there's not a medal for getting to the end first. You're missing everything good. And then it clicked. And I was like, oh my God, this is the Shire I've been wanting to be in. Why am I trying to run through it? Why am I missing all this stuff? And then I was like, are we even real hikers if we go slow and take breaks and bring hammocks? And then I realized, oh my God, people don't hike. I didn't hike because I thought I couldn't do it because it looks so intimidating and terrible. And I was like, this is hiking. I'm still outside. I still have a backpack. I'm still looking at a waterfall. It took me 6 hours instead of 2 because I took so many breaks. But you know what? I had a damn good time doing it. And I was like, suddenly I don't want to die anymore. I feel happy. And I was like, I don't care who this matters to or who it counts for. It counts to me. Well, then I started watching Lord of the Rings as I do, like, once a month. And I was like, oh my God, we're Hobbit hikers. We hike slow because it takes them 14 hours just to get there. I know it's a long way. And those are the extended editions, but whatever. It takes 3 whole books, a whole trilogy for them to go from the Shire to Mount Doom. And I was like, they didn't rush it because they got little legs. They're taking their time. And in the movie and in the book, they love things that grow. And I could look at plant taxonomy the rest of my life. At night before I go to sleep, I open my snake identification group on Facebook and I test myself to see if I can test the snakes and see if I can tell if they're venomous or not. It's a fun game for me. But I realized you're missing the snake, you're missing the rocks, you're missing the ferns, you're missing the clouds. Stop, slow down. And I had to go slow anyway because I'm a slow hiker. I've got all kinds of things wrong with my body. And I was like, so why am I pushing myself to do something that I don't want to do? I want to do this way. then I was like, this isn't a thing. Everyone, even to this day, which to me, it's been 3 years since this has been going on. So to me, it's like, oh, this is old news. Everybody knows about it. No, there are still people who are like, oh my God, am I a Hobbit hiker? Is it because I've been hiking with the wrong people, with the wrong mindset? And I'm like, yeah, yeah. And I was too, even though I didn't go hiking. I had the wrong mindset and I was not accessible to most people unless you're like an athlete or someone with an able body, which I'm not someone with an able body. It's able enough to go on these Hobbit hikes, which I'm very lucky and happy about. But like realizing that you're missing all the good stuff by going fast is just, it blows people's minds. And then they realize that the outdoors actually is for every person. And for some reason, it's been being gatekept. And no one, I don't know why. I don't even understand that because I grew up there and then I lost it. And now I'm back. And what happened in between to change my mind other than like society? So it just became the Hobbit Hikers because we take lots of snack breaks. We care about the things that grow. We try to be good stewards to the land and practice leave no trace. And we want to leave it better than we found it. And it took a lot of research and a lot of learning, but that's the basis behind it.
I think that your story is something that a lot of people listening will resonate with, just because you talking about that reframing in your mind of like, wait, why am I going fast? Why am I racing? And amazing that Shelby was able to kind of like call you on that too. Like that's such a good friend. Yeah, truly a Sam in that situation. But also like, yeah, just going through that reframing in your mind is it's such an aha moment. And then after you do that, you're like, what was I doing before? Like that sucked. And I was doing that for no reason. What? I mean, I had the realization just this past winter that I didn't have to go on like a complete hike for it to like quote unquote count. I had, a couple of hours to kill. I just wanted to move my body and be out in nature. And I was like, well, there's this like 25-mile trail near my house. Can I just go walk on that for a little bit? It's not going to lead to anywhere. I'm not going to get a destination or like a specific view. Is that okay? And then I was like, of course it is. And I went out and I had such a nice time. And I ended up making like a million videos about like the moss. Because I was just like really, yeah. And I was just like really enjoying just like looking at everything. And that was like one of the most fun I've ever had on a hike. And I was just like by myself in the freezing cold looking at the moss. And yeah, it's amazing how much more enjoyable it can be when you kind of let go of that competitive like comparison game that you're playing with yourself. Like you said, you're like, no one actually cares. But like for some reason your mind convinces you that other people give a shit about like how fast you're going, how far you're going, or something like that. But then once you let go of all that, I got it so much more freeing, and it's so much more fun.
Yes. I was on the way to home. I was driving and I was thinking about this podcast that we were about to do together. And I was like, I really would like to go on a hike tomorrow, but what I really want is to be in my hammock. And I was like, I just don't feel like walking in the heat just to set up my hammock. And I was like, what would Mads do? Because Mads would just drive to the place with the hammock trees. And I was like, but in my brain, I was like, that doesn't count. And I was like, yes, it does. So even if you're doing and you're preaching and you're practicing and putting it on the internet, you still struggle with it in your own brain because we're all so like, all my brain will say is acclimatized because of TikTok. We're still so acclimatized to this, but you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. Double acclimatized. And it's just like, stop acclimatizing. Just be yourself. Do what you want.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to go sit in a hammock, go sit in a hammock. Like just do it. Just do it. No, like again, nobody is paying attention, and you're not like, it's not a competition, right? That's the thing with outdoorsy is I think, and like you were saying, you don't know why so much of this has been gate kept, but it has been. And a big piece of it is because people think that it's like this competition of like, well, I suffered more than you, therefore I am more worthy of the outdoorsy title. Now that sounds like a bad time. That sounds like you did it wrong.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the suffering Olympics, and everybody's had to be like, well, you know what? I smelled worse than you and I was out there for 10 days longer. And it's like, okay, I'm sorry. That sounds awful. Yeah. I went to Red Lobster on the way home and had biscuits and had a much better time. And that's okay because I still saw the same mountain you saw. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I completely agree. And that's the other thing too is, sorry if you can hear my dog in the background shaking around, but that's the other thing too is like, uh, what did you get out of that experience? Because for me, sometimes like I will go drive and I'll just go sit and I'll feel the same like amount of healing and the same like amount of peace just sitting by a river as I would if I had accomplished, summiting some hike that I thought I previously couldn't do. Like both give me the same sense of like calm and peace and healing and that same really like happy feeling. It doesn't have to be one or the other. They both provide this amazing benefit that nature provides us.
yes. And I think, just to be super honest and vulnerable, I think that at some point I felt anxious just sitting instead of doing the hike or like just driving somewhere to sit because that eating disorder voice in my brain was like, we have not earned this yet. We have to do something. And so in the beginning, it became like, a way to quiet that voice. The harder I would go, the faster I would go or whatever. And it's still, even at my fastest, is probably half speed of like, some quote unquote outdoorsman person, like some hiker, a real hiker. But then like I used to also sit and be like, Shelby, are we even doing a real hike? Is this even a real hike? If we're doing like a mile? And it was kind of like, well, we're outside. We've got our trail runners on. We've got a camelback on our back. So it's a real damn hike. Like what? And so then I started having to like voice that because people would be like, oh, it wasn't a real hike. And it was people who were like in my Hobbit Hiker group who'd be like, well, it's just a walk. It's not a real hike. And I was like, if you're outside and you're walking, you're hiking. There's nothing, I mean, why not? It's just like saying if you go on a treadmill versus outside or at the mall, you're still walking. Who cares? And who cares about what any of it's called? And if you won or if you did it right or if you did it better, it doesn't matter because what you said, you're getting the exact same feeling out of it. And that's the whole point. And I think people forget that that's the point. That's the point for me, at least. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I cannot agree more. I was talking to Katie, who's the creator of Hot Girl Hikes, and on her website for Hot Girl Hikes, it just says like, in the FAQ section, it's like, but do you go on real hikes? And her answer is just like, there's no such thing as a real hike. Because
Yes,
like
Katie.
there isn't. Yeah. We are obsessed with putting these labels on each other. And like, that's part of like why this podcast exists is like to reclaim the identity or the title of outdoorsy, but also like labels are only helpful for us as we see ourselves. They're not helpful to like place onto other people. So it's the same thing with like labeling it a hike or a walk. Like, who cares? Who cares? You're outside moving your body. Who cares what you're calling it? Okay, sure. You don't think it's a real hike? I do. That's all that matters.
Yep, exactly. It's how I feel about like two completely different subject, but everyone's like, how do you identify? I'm like, queer. I'm a queer person because to me that word encompasses all of it. I don't want to be, pansexual, bisexual, lesbian, whatever. None of it has ever mattered to me as much as the word queer because to me the word queer is all encompassing. It's not just how I identify. It's a culture. It's the movement. It's the people, and it's bigger than anything else. And that always has mattered more to me. And everyone's like, "Well, what do you mean?" And I'm like, I don't have to mean anything for you. It's about me. So that's how I feel happy and comfortable. And I don't feel like it is as exclusionary as other words. It involves everyone. So like that's how I've always identified. But it's the same exact like mindset. It's more, to me, it's more inclusive. You're not excluding anyone out of that. So I don't know. That's just a different subject, but same exact feeling for me.
Yeah, no, I cannot agree more. I completely relate to that as someone who also identifies as queer. I also did not come out until like way later in my life. So like in my late 20s. And so figuring out how to put a label on it or an identity on it or whatever was like such a challenge. And every time I tried to, I kept like running into this friction of like, well, that box doesn't quite fit me right. And that box doesn't quite fit me right either. So like what? And that's why I was so grateful that the term queer was like more encompassing and more inclusive because that felt way better to me. And I was like, oh, okay. This feels better now. But again, it's like only helpful for me to be able to kind of like label that and go through that thought process. Like nobody else needs to be able to like put a label on me. Why does it matter to them?
Right.
So it's very similar. Yeah, I totally relate. I do want to circle back to what you're talking about like mental health and kind of like getting over some of these like thoughts and feelings and stuff that you've had with your relationship to like your body and the outdoors. Specifically, like you talk a lot online about like, being a plus size hiker, and like in a world where the outdoorsy community, we still, even with the great strides we've made in representation over the last several years, and the amazing work so many incredible people are doing to like advocate for more plus size clothing for outdoorsy brands, and like, actually have plus size models being shown by brands and things like that. It's still a struggle. Like still, when you Google hiker, usually it is a thin, heterosexual, cisgendered man who is usually white and like decked out in hardcore technical gear. Like that's what people think of when they think of a hiker. And you've talked a lot about how like, you've reframed your thinking of like what it actually means for you to show up in a larger body in the outdoors, and especially how it relates to like your previous struggles with, eating disorder. I think that this is such a important topic to talk about, like existing in a larger body or existing in a marginalized body of any kind in the outdoors is still something that is a huge barrier for people. And can often prevent them from even wanting to go out just because they don't even see anybody like them out there. So how have you navigated that in your journey with the outdoorsy world?
I feel like I have to speak on like, I don't know, let me start at the beginning again. When we first started hiking, Shelby started filming me, and I was like, can you please stop? I hated it. I hated it so much. And I would not watch the footage. I wouldn't look at the photos. I did a couple times, and it would like ruin my mental health for the rest of the day. I'd be like, I am so gross. I hate my body. I hate how I look. And Shelby just kept doing it without showing me. And I wasn't like mad about it, but obviously she wouldn't do it without consent. But like, she was like, we're going to want to look back on this. And then we started having like the silly, giggly time that we were like the feral, unhinged Hobbit hikes that what they are now. Because once you get comfortable and you stop like having anxiety about how you're doing or what you're not doing right or whatever, it became like a silly. I felt like I was learning how to play again, like a kid. And I don't think I've ever smiled during exercise, because hiking's exercise. And it was like I was grinning and laughing the entire time. And I was like, oh, I'm really happy out here. And I would like to look back on that and see those photos and see that. And then there was this one hike called Twin Falls. I have not been back. I have been back, but not recently. You have to check the water levels before you go, because you have to like wade through a giant creek, and it's up to like, it's at like pussy level, because I've peed my pants there like 4 times. And you just
that's all
no
that
one can
matters.
tell. Yeah. But it is really fast. And so like, Shelby's always like, the water's not safe this time. We can't go to this. So she's always checking, because the first time we went there, and this has a point, I promise. The first time we went, it was like April, and April in Arkansas is like, 80 degrees, and it's also tornado season, but that's usually it. And it was not like a stormy day. It was fine. It's a 5-mile out and back. And when you get to the very end, there's these 2 twin beautiful waterfalls. So we make it, but there's like 8 different land forms to walk past. It's like, here is a river to cross. Here is a mountain to climb. Here is a weird rope that you have to kind of sort of swing over this giant ravine. Here is like some bushwhack with a machete. And you're just like, oh my God, I feel like a bad bitch, right? But also once you get there, you have to go back through all of it again. And the last bit is like, they call it the natural staircase, I think, or the natural sidewalk, something like that. It's where the river used to be. And now it's like this beautiful stepping stone, flat sidewalk. It's so pretty, like the yellow brick road, but it's all naturally formed. And then at the very, very end, before you get to like the 2 big waterfalls, there's this rock face with a ledge, with a creek, it's a river behind it. It's huge. And we had to like shimmy up and like walk across this rock ledge, and it's like this big. And the very last step, my tennis shoe slipped, and I just went backwards up to my head in the water. And I just like had to crawl out and crawl up a giant boulder. And then I was at the waterfalls. It was great, except at the waterfall, I was like, do you feel like the sun's going down a little bit? It's only like 1 p.m. And Shelby's like, it's getting dark. And then it started to drop the temperature. It dropped down about 25 degrees. And we were like, I was freezing. And I was like, oh my God, am I going to die? We still have 3 miles to hike back. And we still have to go past this rock ledge, this sidewalk, the ravine, the bushwhack, the beach, the 3 river crossings. Oh my God. And then it started to snow. It started to fucking snow. And I was like, we're going to die out here. This is how we die. I had a beanie around my feet sitting there because my socks were soaked. So as soon as that happened, like I had to go back and conquer it again because like we made it back to the car as it started to snow. And I stripped naked in the parking lot. Nobody was out there. It's in the middle of nowhere. And took all my clothes off because I was soaking wet still and had to like change in the parking lot. And we made it out. But like, I was like, did I almost get frostbite? Like for real? And she was like, yeah, kind of. And so the whole point of that story, because we're talking about bodies and stuff, I realized like we look back on that footage and I was like, look at me doing that shit. Like at one point I'm like climbing up a log and I look like a little bug. And I was like, look at me. I was like, I mean, yeah, my ass is fat and my arms have like loose skin on them. I was like, but I'm climbing up a damn log. I'm climbing up a mountain. I had to climb up a ravine. And Shelby was like, yeah, I feel like we could kill a man. I was like, yeah, me too. That's how I feel. But like looking back on that footage, I will never look at it again and think, wow, she's fat. I'll look at it and think, damn, she did that. Look how strong she is. Look at how silly we look, even though like we were about to die maybe. But like those pictures and those videos still matter to me from that one hike. It was one of our first hikes because I think back and I'm like, that was scary as shit. But I look like I felt like I could literally lift a car when it was over. I felt so strong and so badass. And it like healed something inside me where I was like, take more pictures and videos, set it up, leave it running. Like we need to hire a camera crew to follow us around. Like I want to be on Big Brother. I want like 24 cameras all the time. I want all the angles. And then it became so silly and so feral and so unhinged that like the uglier the footage was, the better. Like it was like, oh, let me lay here like a fat baby in my hammock and put Vienna sausages between my toes because it's hilarious to me. And it just got worse and worse and worse. But it also got more and more healing and healing and healing to where it was like, I went on vacation, like one of my trips, and I was like, who wants to get a picture? And most of them were like, no. And I was like, why? And I was like, don't put that on them. You were there last 3 years ago. You would not want to look at a picture of yourself. And now to this day, because my job at the hospital is photographer and, you know, content creator. Like that's my job at every job. And so I have to be like, we're doing headshots today. And everybody's like, oh, please, can you Photoshop mine? No. And they're like, oh God, I hate it. And I'm like, it just makes me sad because I realized that was who I was 3 years ago. And now you can't tell me shit about shit. Like if I look at a picture of myself, I'm like, look at her. She's a bad bitch. I don't care about any of the flaws ever. I'm just like, yeah, whatever. I look good. I look so good. I look so strong and cool. And I could be like 3 days without a shower in tent, you know, like I wouldn't have posted the things I post now 3 years ago, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Something has healed by being a wild, untamed, crazy thing in the forest. Like, you know, it opens something inside you where you can just be yourself. And it's great.
I that makes me so happy, and I can relate to that a lot, but I still struggle. Like I think about my journey with my personal appearance and kind of like my vision of myself and seeing myself in more photos and videos and stuff. And I agree with you. Like back in the day, I was so hard on myself and so mean to myself. And like during times that are bringing me a lot of joy. Like I actually, this is going to sound like a tangent, but I swear it's related. I like when I've been doing wedding photography, one of the most common comments I get from like the mother-in-law or the grandma or like the auntie is, can you Photoshop my double chins? Or they'll be like, can you make me look thinner in the photo? And I always kind of, you know, laugh it off in the moment because, you know, we're being silly and stuff. But then like without fail on my drive home from that wedding, I'm thinking about that woman and I'm thinking about how sad I am for her that on like this really joyful, happy day that should just be full of like silliness and love and joy. Like the thing that was on her mind was her body and how that was going to look in a photo. And I've been there. Like I feel like everybody listening to this podcast has been there, and it sucks because it takes away from your joy in that moment and it takes you away. And it can be really hard too in the outdoors, I think, when so much of what you're doing relies on your body, like functioning a certain way. Like when you are hiking and you're like very aware of how heavy you're breathing, like this is one of the reasons why I prefer to hike alone is because I stress out about the other people in my group being more fit than I am and breathing less heavy or needing less breaks or like wanting to go faster. It's like you're very hyper aware of how your body is functioning. And so if you have any kind of like bad relationship with your body or things you're struggling to work through, that becomes like very apparent, especially in the outdoors. So there's like no other distractions. It's like, oh, I'm really thinking about this a lot right now. This is really not good for me. So my next question for you, Chelsea, is like, what advice would you have for people who are listening to this right now and they're like, wow, cool to hear Chelsea's like so happy with her body and like how she looks now. Like, I'm not there. I don't ever see myself getting there. Like, what advice would you have for them right now if they're feeling that way, whether they are where you were 3 years ago? What would you tell them?
Well, first, I'm going to backtrack and tell you every single day I wake up and I look at myself in the mirror completely naked and think, yuck, every day. And I know that that's terrible. It's generational. I think just like you were talking about the people at the wedding. So my grandma, she recently, like the last couple of years, has been like physically not well, and she fell and she lost a lot, not from the fall. She's also like low on blood. So she has to get like transfusions, infusions. And when they went to weigh her, she had lost like 60 pounds, and they were like, you've got to eat, you've got to do these things. Here's drink this Ensure, here's this blood infusion, transfusion. I forget which is which. And I went to see her and she was like, you look so little, and it's not like, I don't want to comment on someone's body, but I was like, do you want to eat something? We need to eat. We're like, that's the goal here. And instead of being like, you're right, we should get some like Ensure in this body, she was like, oh, I don't want to gain it back. She was like, this is the thinnest I've ever been. And I was like, it killed me, because I was just like, we all struggle from the levels that have been passed down to us from, mothers and grandmothers or whoever. I just wanted to cry, and I was just like, I don't want to die. I don't want to go to my old age. I don't want to be 85 and think how I can be smaller when it's literally killing me. Like, that's so sad. And I'm not going to lie, I struggle every single day. I currently am struggling because I'm working with a personal trainer and I'm doing Pilates every day. Oh, not every day, but as many times as I can without it hurting, because I'm trying to keep my mobility. But like, it's not like I don't wake up every single morning and think, I hope I'm thinner today. I hope I'm smaller today. I hope I'm more able today. And that's still something I'm going to struggle with. The thing I don't struggle with is photos. Now they're silly and fun. And when I look at them, I just think that's what I look like. And I will say a lot of it is exposure therapy, because the more I filmed myself and the more I looked at it, the less you can ignore it. And the more desensitized you become to your own body. Because like, I know some people won't look in the mirror. Some people don't want to see themselves like, and I've been there. And the more you force yourself to do it, the easier it gets. But that's also not going to be good advice for every single person, because what if that makes you feel worse? Because it can. Every day is different. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, whenever you were like, there's no distractions outside when you're hiking, that's kind of why I like it. I don't have anyone to compare myself to other than myself. And I will say that one thing that helped me quite a bit was to stop following accounts that made me feel like shit about myself. I don't follow anyone ever if they talk about dieting, intentional weight loss, body shaming, or any of those things. It has to be functional fitness, healing and eating through eating disorder lens. It has to be something that makes me feel better. So that was my first step toward any kind of recovery, was to stop following accounts that made me feel like shit. If I was comparing myself to them, sorry girl, unfollow. It's not about you, about me, or mute. And it has nothing to do with not liking that person. It has to do with how is it affecting you mentally. And if it makes you feel worse, don't look at it. You don't need to look at it, because comparison, to be cliche, is the thief of joy. The end. And I will say, when I was in Bali, I had a traveler with me, and their name is Sam. And Bali has lots of steps. I mean, everything in Bali is a stair. Like let's go down to that temple, 400 stairs. Like 400 back the way. You're like, oh my God, I would just rather die. And it's hot. It's like 95 degrees humidity all the time. Like 95% humidity. It's like your glasses are wet. You're sweaty. It's just gross. But it's the most beautiful place I've ever been. So it's worth it. But we were hiking up these stairs and my body fails on the daily. It's getting worse and worse. And it's something that really is making me sad because like my knees are giving out, my ankles are giving out. I have Ehlers-Danlos and osteoarthritis. Like she's not a good like friend to me sometimes and she makes everything shitty. And I'm just like, oh my God, can you just cooperate? So I'm like always in the back and that's fine because that's what I'm going to do anyway because I don't want anyone to feel like they're in the back and left behind. I'm going to hike with whoever the slowest hiker is and that's usually me. But I'm back there, Sam's behind me, and we're going up these stairs and we're taking breaks every 10 steps because it's hot and it's hard. And I am huffing and puffing and Sam is behind me huffing and puffing. And that was the first thing I noticed was that none of us, first of all, we couldn't control it. Second of all, no one was judging and no one gave a shit. And I hear Sam talking to themselves behind me. And Sam's going, we're just out of breath, but we're not dying. We're uncomfortable, but that's not going to kill us. Being out of breath doesn't mean that I'm a piece of shit. Being out of breath means my body is getting oxygen because I'm working and it's helping me get up these stairs. And we're going to get there one way or the other. And this is all like under the breath whispered, like through these like pants, right? Like, I'm going to be fine. And I don't know if Sam knows this or not, but that is something I have repeated under my own breath after a hike to every other hike I've ever been on. Because sometimes you get in your head and you're like, oh my God, I'm a fat fuck. I'm a fat piece of shit who can't do anything. I'm going to die. This is killing me. And it's like, no, girl, you're walking up through 5,000 feet of elevation. You're supposed to be out of breath. Your body's working to keep you alive. Your body's working to get oxygen to your blood. And sometimes I make it scientific instead of like this mental beauty game of like, how small can I be? Because let me tell you, I am 200 pounds smaller than I used to be. And I'm way more out of breath now than I was back then because my iron is low. So like sometimes fitness isn't about how big you are, how small you are. Fitness is about how happy you are doing the thing you're doing, no matter how long it takes you to be doing it. So if you feel like you're stuck and you feel like shit all the time, you can either go the exposure therapy route and look at yourself constantly and try to see the other parts of you and reframe it, like how strong you are and how fun you are and how much fun you are having and how happy you look. Or you can take the scientific route like Sam and think about like what your body is doing to help you do this, because like your body works hard to keep you alive and to help you like live every single day and helps you get to that hike and back. And we don't appreciate it enough because my body's been my enemy for so long, and trying to make friends with my body has been like a super difficult thing, but it is possible.
One of the things that I really appreciate about your content and like the way that you've talked about your relationship to your body and to fitness and to movement, and also what you've done with, you know, the group that you've created with Hobbit Hikers and the trips that you've run and stuff is like not waiting to do the thing. Because I think that's another thing that another trap a lot of people fall into is like, well, I'm not going to go out hiking until I lose 10 pounds. Or I don't want to have to buy the plus size backpack. I want to fit into the straight size one. So until I can do that, I'm not going to go, or whatever. And then people end up waiting and like missing out on living life, which is just like such a shame, because you should be able to do the things in the body that you have now, whatever it's capable of and whatever you can do safely, right? Like I was talking to someone else where he's like, I do have some fitness goals because I'm doing this really extreme thing. And I was like, that makes sense. Like, that's different than being like an arbitrary, I got to lose 10 pounds before I do this hike. Like, those are two different things. But yeah, I've really appreciated about that with your content and like the trips that you plan and stuff. It's like, don't wait to live your life. Like, just do the thing. And it might be really hard and it might be challenging, but don't wait to live your life until you're like in a different body or you look different or you're at a certain stage. Like, just do it now. Because also like being plus size is not like inherently evil or bad or worse than or anything like that. It's just, you know, like you were saying, like, you know, use the word fat to describe yourself. I was talking to somebody else about this who is a fat plus size boudoir photographer, and she was like, fat's just a descriptor. Like, she was like, it's not a bad word. Like, it's just like who I am right now. And like, I am a fat person, so I'm going to be a fat hiker, or I'm going to be a, you know, and that's just how it is. And I think people like forget and they get caught up in like, again, kind of these labels or this thought process of like, well, until I'm this particular thing, I'm not going to do this activity that usually is associated with that particular thing. So anyways, I just think one of the things I really appreciate about your content is that you're like, no, do the damn thing anyways. Do it.
Thank you, because I had to learn that myself because
Yeah.
I grew up in the 90s. I grew up during like heroin chic. Everybody had to be, and I love her. I love her. Paris Hilton's body is insane. And that was something that we all wanted. And, like that is not attainable. That is genetic. And I am friends with her on TikTok, and it's my most like claim to fame. I love her so much. Like, oh my God, I love her so much.
That's
Like
incredible.
I would die for her. Read her biography if you haven't, everybody. It's so good. But I will never be a Paris Hilton body. Like, it's not a thing. It's not in the cards for me. And that was something that people, I think, don't understand. There is a grieving process to becoming friends with your body. You have to grieve the things that you thought could be something. Like, I remember whenever I first started dieting, I was 11 or 12. My dad got me diet pills because he wanted me, I wasn't even overweight. He wanted me to not become overweight. And of course, it led to what it led to. I remember sitting with my sister opening, it was either Alloy or Delia's catalog, which was like an amazing 90s catalog with so much fun fashion, right?
Delia's, yes.
Oh my God. I would have died for a Delia's like wardrobe. And we were sitting in my little country house out in the middle of nowhere in the floor of the computer room, because in the 90s we all had a computer room. And we had a Sharpie and we were circling everything I would wear when I was skinny. I was 11. And we were like, one day, whenever I'm super thin, I'm going to wear that tank top with those spaghetti straps, because that's all I wanted was spaghetti straps. And I was like, I'm going to be so hot. I was 11. And like, it's so silly to me that I'm almost 40. I'm 38 years old. And to this day, I'm still like, I'm really sad about that. I really still want that. I still want those Delia's things. Like, and it's like, you can have it. You don't have to be a certain way, but there is a grieving process of like, hey, you're never going to have Paris Hilton's body. You're never going to have it. It's not genetically possible. And it's not even something I want anymore. But that is a grieving process to let those things go. And there's a lot of shame involved with that, because you're like, I shouldn't want that. But it's kind of like the Barbie speech. They're not going to love you if you're fat or thin, or if you're losing weight or gaining weight. You cannot win. You have to just accept where you're at. And then as far as like the comment section of my TikTok, where everybody's like, oh, she's never hiked. Oh, that was her first hike ever. Or, oh, who let that bear out into the forest? Like, just shit like that. And they're always cis men who are someone I would not touch with a 10-foot pole, who think that I would. And I'm just like, ew. But like, and again, all the words of wisdom come from other people. Like Shelby told me once when I was really upset about these comments, because I was bombarded for like 2 weeks straight of just like, you are the worst. You're ugly. You're fat. You're gross. Just shit like that all day long from men. And because I got on the wrong side of TikTok, and Shelby was like, would you take advice from those people? Like, would you take advice from them if they told you how to do something? I was like, fuck no. And she was like, then why are you taking criticism from them? And I was like, oh shit. And that changed the game for me, like right there. I was like, oh. And she was like, what do we say? We do not take criticism from people we wouldn't take advice from. And that changed it for me. I was like, do I value your opinion? Not at all. Not at all. If I saw you at Walmart, I would not look twice at you. I wouldn't even eat the same food in your cart, because I hate you that much. And I don't value you as a person or your opinion. And you have no intelligence. And you misspelled every shitty thing you said to me anyway. So like, why would I even take criticism from someone like that? I don't. And a lot of it is easy for me to say, because I don't really center men in my life at all, because like they don't matter to me at all. I just don't. And so it's like, if I find a guy who's actually cool and normal, then we do get along, because they've passed like 17 different levels in my brain of like, oh, because I'm not going to have sex with them. So like, that's gone. And if they act in a certain way at all, I'm just like, no. So once you get to the through all those little like, gates in my brain, you pass the test. I've got like 3 guy friends that I actually really truly would take advice and criticism from. And we do hike together. And I won't lie, I have still been a little bit self-conscious if I'm out of breath, because they are more fit than I am. More fit, in quote, But even then, we still had a good time. And I had to remind myself, like, who cares what they think? Who cares? They don't care. They're here to hike with you. They're not here to be like, she's out of breath. Gross. What a big fat fatty. Like, And that's just it. Like when you reclaim that word, maybe I am a big fat fatty. Maybe I am out of breath. Who gives a shit? You know who's not out here? That guy behind the keyboard calling me a big fat fatty. He's behind the damn keyboard. And there's a song I'm obsessed with by Garfunkel and Oates. They're like this like silly little like parody band. But one of the lyrics is, it's better to be a loser than a spectator. I'd rather play the game and lose. At least I fucking tried. At least I'm out here. At least I'm participating. It's better than spectating from the side and calling someone a loser. I'd rather be a loser out here doing it than a loser behind a keyboard talking shit. At least I'm doing the goddamn thing and I'm participating. And I just think it's such a good song. It's called Such a Loser and it's beautiful. And I sing it to myself at least once a week. And I'm like, I am a loser and I'm happy about it because at least I'm doing it. You know, I don't care if I lose because I got to play. They're not even playing.
Yeah. I love that. Like, don't be afraid to be seen trying, right? I mean, everybody starts somewhere. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody starts somewhere. Also, people are not thinking about you as much as you think that they are. Like, that's one thing my mom has told me before in the past. She's like, people aren't thinking about you as much as you think.
And then you're like, oh my God, how selfish am I? How self-centered am I that I'm like, the world is looking at me. I am the main character and everybody hates me. You're like, no. I'm not looking at anybody.
Side character, if that, in someone's life. And I think that one of the things that is tough, I think, for people who are not content creators or are not putting themselves out there online, but they see a lot of our content and they see these comment sections and, you know, get in their heads of like, oh my God, everybody out there is this bad. Like everybody out there is thinking the same thing these terrible commenters are thinking. The thing is they're not. And the people that like, for the most part, are actually out there on the trail or like in the outdoors are not those losers sitting on their little couch in their mom's basement, writing the comment from their burner account with like the spelling errors. Like those are not the people that you're mostly going to be encountering in the outdoors. Majority of the people are lovely and nice and also are going to walk past you, give you a little wave and keep on going. You know, like that is the majority of the interaction. So I know that like we like unfortunately experience like the worst side of humanity online, but that's just not the majority of what in real life interactions are like out in the outdoors. So hopefully people can find some comfort with that and not be too frightened by the absolute vitriol in the comment sections.
Yeah. And I know I could just like ignore it, but I'm not that kind of person. As far as I used to get really angry or really sad. Now it's just like water off a duck's back. I'm just like, oh my God, another imbecile. But I will go through and report, delete, and block because I'm used to it. But like you said, sometimes my audience, they don't need to be subject to that. They don't need to see that shit. They don't need that in their brain at all. And I will say on my last trip, we went to Yellowstone and Yosemite, 2 different trips, but same guide, Phil. Bless Phil. He'll never hear this because he doesn't use the internet. But I just want to say, if you ever read a comment and you're like me, you're a plus size person, you're not like the peak of outdoorsmen, right? Phil is an outdoor guide. He's been doing this for 20 years. Okay. He has hiked the Mist Trail 6 times this year alone, just for fun with his groups. And that man is still not even like, he had one hate comment. Someone was like, how dare he hike in sandals? Phil was upset about that comment for 2 days straight because he doesn't use the internet. So just because you think, oh, I'm just being like kind of a weakling or everything's so hard for me, it hurts when anyone's mean to you, no matter who you are. Even if you're Phil, who is perfectly fit, who has hiked this trail 4,000 times, some idiot in his mom's basement was like, I can't believe he's hiking in sandals. And all day Phil was like, well, he's not out here hiking. I would you do this in sandals. Like all day he was upset about it. And I would just like to say I was nervous when he was my guide because he looked like, you know, the model of hiking. And I was like, oh, he's gonna make sure that we like go fast. He's gonna stress me out. No, because usually I'm the one who's making the speech on the first day. Like, hey, let me pull my guide and be like, hey, sir, we're the Hobbit Hikers. We hike slow. We're gonna take breaks. Don't rush us. But, you know, whatever. We don't care if we get to the end. We're just here for a good time. No, he cut me off and beat me to the punch and was like, I want you to listen to your body because we're here for nature and we're here. And so that man had the exact same mindset as me and as most of my community. And I was like, that is also proof of what you just said, that most of the people in that community outside, true outdoorsy people who are there for the beauty of it all, and not for some bullshit or not to prove something. That's how they feel about it. He's like, you're out here doing it. Who cares if it takes us till midnight? Who cares? Who cares if you're out of breath? I'll wait. And he was just so cool. And it made me like hope. There's hope in the world, in my heart, for like, they're not judging you. Those people aren't judging you. Those people are out here doing the same shit you are for the same reason. And if they are judging you, well, would you take criticism and advice from them? No. Fuck them. Fuck them.
Oh, yes. Yes to all of that. I'm like ready to run through a brick wall right now. But yeah, I mean, yeah, 100%. I think that it has been a really surprising thing for me as I've also kind of gone through ups and downs with my, ability to relate to the outdoorsy term. But I'm like, everybody can call themselves outdoorsy, but who can't is the people like those dudes in their basement who like think that they know better. They think that it's reserved for the elite. It's reserved for a specific type of person. Because if you have those beliefs, you don't understand what it means to be outdoorsy. You don't understand what it means to be communing with nature. You don't understand like the real reason people go outdoors. You are the one that doesn't get to lay claim to that title. So I love hearing stories of people who are like, oh, I thought that they were going to be not, not accepting or not accommodating. And you find out that they're amazing, because that actually reminds me of my dad, who's like this mountaineer, like has climbed Mount Rainier a million times. Summit, like had a summit attempt at Denali, like Eagle Scout, like hardcore outdoorsman. But like he taught me from a young age, like we're just going to go out and we're going to look at the stars, or like we're just going to go look at the bugs. That's what we're going to do. We're going to go for a hike. We might not make it to the waterfall that we're trying to go to because we get distracted by looking at the spider webs, but that's okay. like those are the true outdoorsmen. Those are the true outdoorsy people. And I love hearing those stories. So that's great. I want to kind of end on a note talking about like the trips and the hikes and stuff that you have planned. And before we get into talking about like what's upcoming for you, what are some of the things, I know you've mentioned them a little bit in this episode, but like what are some of the other things that you do to really make sure that these trips and these hikes and these adventures that you're organizing are just inclusive and welcoming and lovely? So if anybody's listening is interested in joining you on something, they can feel like more comfortable and kind of know more of what to expect.
So I work with a company called Trova Trip. I don't choose every activity. There are like itineraries to choose from, but each itinerary first is labeled by activity level. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 being the hardest, 1 being the least. And I go through, I can pick and choose and be like, no, that's too much, or that's not enough, or whatever. So first I vet all of the itineraries personally and look at them. Second, I make sure that when we do meet our guide, that I meet with the guide privately and say, hey, first of all, we're going to go slow. Or, I give him the whole spiel, or her, whoever it is. And I tell that person that we will not be rushed. And I am their advocate, period. Point blank. That is my job on these trips, is to advocate for these people. So I will just say, we've been through some actual literal shit on these trips, and vomit and crying, and so a couple arguments, mostly, not really, but some. And all of these trips, the point is, I'm going to get there. We're going to have our meeting with our guide, me privately, to discuss expectations. So that's the first advocation. And then, is that a word? I'm not sure. That's the first advocating I do. The second one, we will sit and do our welcome. Hello, here's what to expect. My number 1 rule is that you advocate for yourself. If you need alone time, if you are homesick, if you have a problem with someone, you come to me immediately and you tell me, and we will talk about it. I'm a certified group facilitator, number 1. I have a license. So we're going to talk it through and we're going to figure it out. So then we also have a discussion about hiking itself. We are going to be slow. We are going to be out of breath. I'm going to stay in the back. We're going to talk about leave no trace. We're going to talk about hiking etiquette, like if someone's going uphill versus downhill, who has to move. And whenever we take a break and the slowest person at the end of the line catches up, we don't immediately start to hike again. We all hike our own hike. And that's part of their advocation for yourself. You are advocating for what you need. And we're not going to get our feelings hurt, because the other rule is we assume positive intent all the time. If someone says something that was hurtful to you, it probably wasn't on purpose. It was probably a misunderstanding, or heard something incorrectly. And so we talk about that as well. and so then the full itinerary, I make my own little PDFs of everything that has like day to day, what to pack, what weather to expect. I bring extra snacks. I bring extra Band-Aids. I'm always going to overpack because you never know when you're going to need it so you don't accidentally die. Like the time I did at Twin Falls and I wasn't prepared with the snow. Or recently the trip to Yosemite when my friend Grace had a thyroid Hashimoto's attack and had to be airlifted off a mountain. And also
Oh my
like
gosh.
full on diarrhea in the middle of the trail in front of everyone there because it's a busy place. And you know what? She was not even upset when it was over because I had everything she could possibly need in my backpack. I had a great
You were
guide who
ready.
was there to help. Yeah, prepared, who was there to advocate for her. And we took care of her. And it was never made a big deal. It was just like, yeah, well, just shit on the trail. It's over. The worst is over. Like, who cares? So it's supposed
Shit
to be
happens,
comforting.
literally.
Shit literally happens. Even Phil on the last day was like, y'all are a really solid group of people, like solid. And Grace was like, unlike my shit, right? And we were all just like, Grace. But like, that's the whole point. It's a
Yeah.
safe space to do what you need to do, literally and figuratively. We're not here to judge. And it's a lot of neurodivergent crew. A lot of us are neurodivergent. So that's like, I'm going to advocate for you. I'm going to carry your diarrhea wipes down the mountain in my backpack like I did with Grace. I cleaned up vomit on that same trip and accidentally got it on my own face. Like, I'm here to help and I'm not here to judge. And I think that's the main thing. And then if you think your body can't do something, that's our other rule. If you need to turn around, you turn around and you won't go it alone. And so like on the last trip to Yellowstone, it was very cold and rainy and it was like my arthritis was flared up because of it. And I was so mad because I just wanted to see Grand Prismatic, but there was like another 400 feet of elevation. That's not that much, but my knees were giving out and I knew it and I was upset. And I was like, hey guys, I'm just going to say it now. This is our first day. And if I push myself to that next 400 feet, I'm going to be fucked the rest of the trip. And I don't want that. And I'm really, really sad to miss it. Like I'm sad as shit about it. And I knew I had the right people and I knew I did the right thing because I had my whole group said, and I was like, what the hell? And they were like, Chelsea, you gave us a speech yesterday about advocating for our needs and you're the first person to do it. And I was like, oh, I am doing that. And my friend Becky was like, actually, I want to go back too because my knee also hurts, but I didn't want to do it by myself. And then I was like, Becky, I'm really sad about it. And she was like, hey, I know, but you've been there before. They'll take pictures. And now you've opened that door, that conversational door. So no matter what the rest of this trip brings, everyone will be safe to have that same conversation if they need to. They can say, I don't want to do this or I can't. And it won't be a shameful thing because you already did it. And I was like, I have a good group of people around me. And Becky was like, and you built that community. And I was like, stop it, Becky. Stop making me feel so cool and good. Like, I wanted to be mad and sad, you know? But like, it's such a safe place and it's a sacred space to me of like, it doesn't matter if you're cool and it doesn't matter if you're thin and it doesn't matter. And none of it matters. We're here to be here and to get our shit out in the open and to cry and scream and laugh and eat marshmallows. And that's it. And so if that's what you're in, that's what you want to do, then come on, let's do it.
I think a lot of people have, if they have had experiences with like group hiking and stuff, sometimes those are really negative because it's like the worst of everything kind of combined. It's like you're being left out, you're being excluded, you're being left behind, you don't feel safe, like all of these things. So it's so cool that you've created this community and this environment where it's like truly the complete opposite. I just think it's so special what you have been able to build and so amazing. And hopefully someday I can join the Hobbit Hikers on a trip, you know, fingers crossed. For anybody who is like, oh my God, sign me up. I'm ready to go. What's coming up next for you? What do you have going on in the future?
Well, first, thank you so much for saying all those nice things. And you remind me one more thing. The other rule is we don't do circles in my group. We do horseshoes. So always leave a space because someone might still feel left out. And so if they want to join, you don't have to make room. There's already room. So like that's one more rule I forgot about. The horseshoe rule. We don't stand in a circle. We stand in a horseshoe. So no one ever has someone's back to them and you're always welcome to be in that group.
I love that.
What's next? So it's going to sound amazing, but they're all sold out. We're going, Costa Rica is in December and that's our second time to go, but this one's less hikey and more spiritual. So we're doing an eco retreat where we are doing like forest bathing and meditation and stuff like that. And then
Awesome.
I I'm shocked by this. So just know this sounds fake and not real to me too. So if it sounds like that to you, same. We're going to Iceland February and March. And my travel, I guess, agent, I'm not sure what to call her. Hi, Jen, if you're listening. Jen, who works at Trova Trip, she was like, what do you think about Iceland? And I was like, that's a dream. That's my number one dream of all time, actually. And she was like, do you want to try to too? And I was like, I'm not flying to Iceland twice. Like, I'm tired already. She was like, no, girl, we'll do them back to back, give you 2 or 3 days in between, and you just stay. And I was like, that's never going to happen. That's never going to happen. It immediately both sold out. And I was like, what? Are you kidding me? So the thing is, most of the people who go on these trips have already been on one because it's such a good vibe and it's such a family. And it's just like, you get to be so wild and so free that you come home like an animal. And you're like, I don't even know how to go back into society. I just want to scream. And it's like, yeah, me too. So let's go again. So we're going to Iceland in February and March, and those are sold out. And then our next trip after that, because after that point, I was like, well, shit, if Iceland sells out, my number 2 is Galapagos, and I'm going to try it. Immediately sold out. I was like, oh my God. So that's in May of next year. And then after that, I don't know. I think the trip that will launch next, if all works out, will be Morocco for next winter. Like, because it's like you have to go to the hot places when it's cold here and vice versa, because we have opposite climates and things. And also it's nice to get out of the cold to go to a warm place, which is why we go to Costa Rica in December. But Morocco will launch sometime in the holiday season. If you're interested in any of these things, you can follow me. We have, first and foremost, our Hobbit Hikers bestie group on Facebook. That's who gets to know about the trips first. They get first dibs. They get early access if they want it, because if they really need it, then I'm not going to launch it to the public. These are people who are in my group, my close group. And that's also where we talk about gear recommendations, any kind of like, I feel like shit today, here's why. Or here's what I did. Look at this cool picture, or look at this mushroom I saw. Like, that's where we communicate. And it's like not as censored as TikTok. We just get to talk, and it's a private group. Then there are group chats for all the states. And if there's not one, we'll make one for your place so that you can find local Hobbit hikers to hike with. We're trying to make this like a very inclusive space. So everyone's welcome to join. And then everything else, like travel information, is all link in my bio. It's under my Hobbit Hiker Adventure link. So you can see all the trips and add yourself to any of the wait lists if you're interested on the trips that are sold out. Because if someone cancels last minute, we'll contact you first and be like, hey, did you still want to go? No, there's no pressure. There's no, like, you're not signing up. You're just letting me know, like, hey, think of me if someone cancels. So I will reach out to you first. But that's where to find me. And then all of the rest of it, all of the ridiculous, childish, feral, unhinged shit is on TikTok. Instagram is a little bit less unhinged because they have stricter rules and meaner people. So, but yeah.
Okay, awesome. I'm going to make sure that all of these things are linked in the show notes too. So wherever you're listening to this or watching it, all of the links will be included in the description. So definitely be sure to give Chelsea all the love and follow her. Your TikTok is hilarious and just an absolute delight. I love it so much. So highly recommend people go check you out on all of those things. And yeah, stay tuned for upcoming trips. That's incredible that those have sold out. I'm not surprised at all, though. I mean, truly, I'm not. But I mean, it's so well deserved for the community that you've built up and all of the amazing content you've produced that helps people just feel more welcome and included and happy and just at peace in nature. I love it so much. So yeah, all those links will be available to everyone in the notes. Chelsea, thank you so much for joining me on this. This was so lovely. I'm so glad we got to connect finally. Any final words for our listeners?
Well, thank you for having me, number one. Number two, I think what we've talked about a lot in this episode is limits. And I think maybe the whole point is the limit does not exist. Just like being queer, just like hiking, it's all encompassing. It's bigger than that. It's bigger than that. It's the earth, like it's bigger than us. So stop limiting yourself. And if you think you can't do something, maybe you can, and maybe you should just try it. And if you fail, who cares? Who cares? I would rather be a loser than a spectator. And I think that's something that you should always think about. And you're welcome to hike with me because I'll definitely be slower than you. And just, I don't know, just get out there. The outdoors is for everybody, everyone and everybody. So get out there and do it.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you, Chelsea. Well, that concludes this episode of Outdoorsy. If you are interested in connecting more, please go to patreon.com/outdoorsy to support the podcast. And be sure to rate this 5 stars, please, wherever you're listening. Do it. No, I'm just kidding. But that really does help a lot. Just get the word out there, help our guests feel like they're making a difference, because they really, really are. And yeah, continue to support Chelsea on all of those different platforms and stuff. But until next time, do it. Until next time, thank you all so much for listening. I hope that you get out there in whatever way makes sense to you, makes you feel good. And just remember that you belong out there.